I'd like to share a story, actually an experience that I had by applying one of your principles. What happened was I was filling up my motorbike one summer night, about 9 p.m. And as I was waiting for my motorcycle to be filled up, I noticed on the other side of the petrol pumps a really glossy black shiny car, and it caught my attention. So while I was waiting for the bike to be filled up, I meandered around the other side to get a closer look. And as I looked at this car, it was the most beautiful car that I'd seen as a street car. And I was admiring it, and I looked around it, and it was the first time I'd seen this car, and it was an Audi R8. I looked through the window to acknowledge the person, to say, wow, nice car, and it was a very attractive woman driving the car. Just gets better. So anyway, I thought to myself, wow, that's a really beautiful car. And then I thought nothing of it. And a few months later, I was listening to you, and you were mentioning about you only have to hold something in your attention for 17 seconds. I listened to that, and then a little while later, I thought to myself, what could I hold in my attention for 17 seconds that I'd really like? And I thought about the Audi car. I remember you made a point where you said, although you hold something in your mind for 17 seconds, it must be something that you can actually believe you can have. So if it's too far out of your belief system, it's probably not going to be good. So I thought to myself, well, that Audi car, I couldn't see myself actually purchasing one right now, but I could actually see myself sitting in one. I could believe that. And I could see myself looking at all the instrument panels and feeling the comfort of the chair and smelling the leather and holding the steering wheel. And I could feel that. And I said, yeah, I can do that. So I did that. Well, I forgot about that for a while, and it was about 3 months later, and I was getting my bike tuned up again. And a guy rolled in on another bike, and he had some decals around his wheels, and I liked them. And I asked him where he got that done. And he gave me the address, and I booked my bike into that place, and it was a custom shop for cars. So I booked in, and about a week later I went over, I dropped my bike in, and when I arrived, the guy that came out, we had an instant kind of interaction. We hit it off really well. So he said, just fill in your details here. And I said, how long will it take? He said, oh, you can actually wait for it. So I was just waiting, and I was looking around the workshop as I was waiting, and there was a picture on the wall of an Audi R8, and I was looking at it, really focused on it, and he came over my right shoulder and he said, isn't that a great car? And I said, yeah, it's the sexiest street car I've ever seen. We just left it at that. And then I picked up the bike. I was happy with the job, and I went home. And then about 2 hours later, I got a phone call from him. And he said, hey, Aldo, it's Jim from BBC. And that was the name of the custom shop. And he said, we're doing a TV commercial. And you know that Audi R8 you were looking at on the wall? I said, yeah. He said, that's mine. And I want you to be the driver in this TV commercial. So, of course, there was no hesitation about that. They arranged the day, and I was in the car, and the film crew was all around, and, you know, it was a pretty big production. And I was sitting in the car, and one of the film crew poked his head through the right window, and he said to me, isn't this exciting that you're doing all this? And actually, the most exciting thing is I was sitting in that car, looking at the instrument panel, feeling the steering wheel, smelling the leather, exactly how I had it in my mind in those 17 seconds. I was thinking to myself, that's not exciting considering that I've created this. And if I've created this, what else could I create? So for me, that was a real confirmation on that principle worked. And now there's a TV commercial with me in it driving the car. And
we have a little more to give you about that, and that is, last evening, Esther was talking to a friend on the telephone who was with her 3 years ago when she purchased her Audi R8. And black.
Could you repeat that, please?
So thoughts are in the air, aren't they? And so what part of all of this active vibration made you light up in that way? You see what we're getting at? Everything that comes to you is coming on the wings of the active vibrations. There is nothing that you cannot be or do or have. And so if 17 seconds of giving attention to something with no resistance within it can produce an experience like that, isn't it easy to understand how anything and everything that you desire can come to you by utilizing that same formula?
Exactly, yeah. I love that saying, if nothing's impossible, I'm possible. So that just made, to me, that just, it's like, okay, where do we start?
Well, there are some things that we want to emphasize here because everyone really enjoyed the unfolding of your story. But we want to emphasize some important points. And the most significant thing that many of you felt as you were relaying what happened was the pleasure that you were taking along the way, the willingness to allow things to unfold, the willingness to let it be whatever it was being. You were taking pleasure from where you were. You were not lamenting what wasn't happening. You were looking for the pleasure where you were. And so you were actually encouraging and increasing unfolding of something. And that really is the art of allowing. That really is the art of deliberate creation. It's about being satisfied with what is. Because there's an understanding that it's in a process of becoming, and there's no point in trying to rush the process any more than you would stomp on the kernel of corn and dig it up and eat it because it's not performing fast enough for you. And so by feeling satisfaction about whatever is, you were satisfied as you were there with your bike. You were satisfied with what you saw. You felt an impulse to appreciate and did. You acknowledged how beautiful it was, and there was not angst or jealousy or discord in your vibration, which led to the next impulse and timing. Timing of impulses is everything. The impulse and then the timing when you act upon the impulse, so that you actually rendezvoused with someone who could lead you someplace, who could lead you someplace, who could lead you someplace. And can you feel that in every bit of that, every part of the story that you told, what was the presiding emotion that was within you? It was one of satisfaction and or appreciation.
Ease. It was so smooth, and the whole process was very enjoyable.
Because you were not trying to make something happen, you were allowing it to happen. And so this is what your conversation brings to this forum. It's the awareness of the value, the magic. Magic's not the right word, but you like the word, so we'll use it. The magic of soft desire. The magic of a desire without angst, a soft desire, a believable desire, a believable desire. You made your desire believable. Just want to see it. Just want to see a picture of it. If you were to listen back to some recordings, you would hear a lot of conversation about Esther and her Audi R8. It was the most exhilarating vehicle that she has ever driven. She came from big, lumbering Prevost buses, high profile and slow around corners, to an Audi R8 that understands the road like no other vehicle that she's ever been in. She would take it out into the desert of Texas and read the road sign that said, this turn should not be more than 45 miles an hour. It was a turn that she'd made many times at 45 miles an hour because she was in a 45-foot Prevost bus with a car behind it. But now she says to herself, we'll see about that. So takes the turn at 55 and doesn't even know it's a turn. Takes it at 65, still doesn't even know that it's a turn. She's thinking someone should take that sign down. That sign doesn't make any sense at all. In other words, just the fun of discovering something that is different than anything else that she has known. Something more?
Yeah, I have one more thing that I'd like to share, and that is earlier.
Or ask.
Or ask? No, I think it's more of a sharing.
All right.
Yeah. But thanks for asking. Earlier on, we were talking in the middle segment a lot about meditation. One of the things that you said about meditation was to, well, let me just say how I found the meditation working for me. Well, I notice when I meditate that there's that voice, that the mind is like chattering. And what I realized is that is the nature of the mind. The mind is already active.
The mind is always in the receiving mode. But what is this receiver tuned to is the question. The mind chatter could be coming from source, or it could be coming from some other stream of man's conscious thought. Yes.
So I wasn't worried about that. So the mind chatter, what I started to do was I started to observe the mind chatter and not become involved in it. And what I found was happening was that as I observed the mind chatter and just let it be, I didn't resist it, I just allowed it to be what it was doing, and I observed it. I used the mind chatter like you were using the sound, but I used the mind chatter. That was my way of...
Here's what we know about that. If you are observing the mind chatter, then you're in the receiving mode. Because if you're doing the chattering, it's different. Are you thinking the chatter, or are you observing the chatter? Esther meditated for 9 months before she actually realized that she was receiving us, because the guidance that she'd been given is sit in a quiet room and wear comfortable clothing, and when your mind wanders as it will, release the thought. So even though we were presenting the thought to her, she thought that she was thinking the thought, and so she just breathed it away instead of understanding that she was receiving a thought that we were offering to her. You feel the distinction? And so when you're in meditation, this is very good encouragement that you are offering here. If you find yourself just observing, that's a different thing. That means you're receiving the thought, and your advice to everyone is good advice. Just let it flow and see where it goes. But can you feel the distinction between you thinking the thoughts, and usually the subject matter tips you off. Your mind's usually chattering about things that you're worrying about, because when you're thinking, remember, your thinking is usually about a step one thing. You're sorting and sifting and evaluating, and that's different than having asked the question, having source have received the question and wrapped itself all around the question, and now delivering an answer to you and you receiving the answer.
Yeah, that's great, because when I do that, I find that it's like what happens is the volume of the thoughts gets turned down and they kind of fade into the background, and then I'm presented with this kind of a void where I'm just able to just like, it's so delicious just to sink into that void, and the thoughts are there in the background, but they're not bothering me. I'm more focused on what's going on here in this beingness, just being there.
And then the question that we have is that following that beingness, do you begin to receive something with clarity?
Absolutely.
Because
it is clarity, that part there. And I'm not looking for anything. I'm just there, just being, and whatever comes.
Well, he's done a good job of describing what we were reaching for earlier as we were talking about getting into that receptive mode and then just allow the thought to come to you. We think that this is a really good conversation, and the best part of it is you coming to a place where you're able to acknowledge the difference between the thoughts you're thinking and the thoughts that you're receiving, which is the same conversation as step 1 and step 3. See how it all fits together? Enough?
Yes, thanks very much.